welcome to my channel. My name is Bailey Ruskus, also known as Chef Bay, and I'm a professional plant-based chef and a best-selling cookbook author of the cookbook Cook, Heal, Go Vegan. I am so excited that you're here and you landed on this video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want more tips and tricks in the kitchen, keep watching. This is also the place for exclusive videos to my podcast, The Plant Remedy. If you're interested in diving deeper in plant-based cooking or just want to incorporate a little bit of fun into your cooking routine, join our membership called Cook Vibe Heal that you can cook with me live weekly, and it's so much fun. So I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you soon. All right, guys, I'm sitting here with the amazing Dr. Michael Klaper. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm delighted to be with you. Thanks for the invitation.
How is your day going so far?
My day is going beautifully. I woke up on the right side of the ground. Everything got better from there.
Yes.
And I'm just happy to be alive. And got food in the fridge. Clean water comes out of the tap. We are lucky, lucky people. Nobody's dropping mortar shells in my house. We're blessed. We have a blessed life here.
Yes, I love that. Just like starting off with ultimate gratitude. I think that's such a good practice. Like, not just here on the podcast, but in anywhere in life, just dropping in and having gratitude for anything, even if you're having a rough day.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that. So I ask all my guests this mainly because I'm a chef and all I think about is food, but what's your favorite like plant-based meal right now? Like, what are you vibing with the most in your kitchen right now?
Oh my. Oh, my wife makes just a beautiful Buddha bowl. When she knows give quinoa and greens and mushrooms, I'm a happy guy. And
yes.
So she lines a nice wooden bowl with a thick layer of quinoa. She steams up some broccoli or kale and throws them in there, and along with some sweet potatoes, something yellow, carrots, etc. And whatever other veggies we got, and then she makes this dynamite tahini sauce that she dribbles over the top and puts a big smile on my face every time. And
yes,
often go back for seconds with no guilt at all because it's just great food. So I'm a beautiful guy.
I love that. You get like all the colors of the rainbow, plus you get all that amazing energy from your wife, right? Giving you all that love in the food.
Absolutely.
That's perfect. That's such a good answer. So I've been like doing so much, just like reading up on you. You have such an incredible, not only resume, but just like life story. You've done so many amazing things. And I think the first thing that strikes me the most is the fact that you grew up on a dairy farm. And so I'd love to kind of just like hear your perspective on growing up on a dairy farm and how that kind of shaped who you are today.
Oh my. Well, that's
jumping right into it.
Yes, no, it's a very interesting question because I hope I'm not telling any stories out of school here, but I hear you've been struggling with endometriosis.
Yes.
And that definitely ties back to the dairy products, which I'll talk to you about. Absolutely.
Yes.
So I grew up in Chicago, but back in the 1950s, every summer, the big, terrible polio epidemics would sweep through the major cities. And my mother's favorite uncle had a dairy farm up in northern Wisconsin. So as soon as school was over, June 3rd, next day we were up on the farm in Wisconsin. And I spent my first 16 summers on the farm, milking cows, driving tractors, slinging hay bales. Living a farm life.
Honest work.
Yes. It was. And but I saw the reality of dairy. Before we get into that, it was a wonderful experience. That's why I met the natural world out there.
Right.
I spent all winter in Chicago schoolrooms, but come summers, my days were filled with walks in the forest and afternoon thunderstorms and animals of all types, hawks and deer and salamanders and foxes. And biology was so vivid to me that it made so much sense, and I loved it so much that that's clearly opened the door to me becoming a physician. I was the kid who wanted everyone to be okay. And,
right.
I kind of melted together there. But to your question, milked a lot of cows, but already the image that the dairy companies and dairy industry puts in our head that cows are in the dairy barn getting milk and happily doing so. That's simply not true. Dairy cows give milk, that's what they do. No, they don't. There's only one reason those big mammals are giving milk. Like all other mammals, they just had a baby.
Right.
And the cows are made pregnant. Well, that's when a cow would become fertile, we'd lock her up in the stanchion. We'd call the guy from Badger Breeders. He'd come out and put on a rubber gauntlet, ram his arm up into the cow's rectum, through the rectal wall, grab her cervix, the opening to her uterus, and with the left hand, take a big long glass tube full of bull semen, ram it into her vagina, up into the uterus, squeeze the bulb, a squirt of bull semen would come out, and she would become pregnant. No cow liked that procedure. I saw it on dozens and dozens of times. There's a name for that among humans there that I will not use, but it was a dreadful procedure. The cow would then stop giving milk. Pregnant mammals don't lactate. There's a good reason for that. And I remember my uncle pulling out his little notebook, Bossy number 17, won't give milk until she has her calf in the spring. And that's just the way it was. That was biology. Then she would carry her calf for 9 months. Often we would come back just in the early spring the next year and see her give birth to her calf. And bring her into the dairy barn, and within the next morning, my uncle would come in, scoop up the baby calf and put it in the veal pen. There was a boy calf about 10 yards down the way in the barn. Well, you asked me about my experience on the dairy barn and dairy farm. The most painful auditory memory I carry in my head is the sound of a mother cow locked up in that stanchion, bawling for her baby. They have a very strong mother-infant bond. Her baby's in the veal pen 10 yards away. She would let out the most heart-rending bellows. Hour after hour, day after day and night it would go. It would just tear my heart apart. I didn't really understand why. I was saying, okay, what's behind that? Well, I know now that the calf is the enemy of my uncle. He wants that milk for his profits to sell for the dairy, and there's when you see pictures of dairy cows, there's often tears going down their cheeks. There's an air of sadness in the dairy barn that I didn't understand why. Now I understand why. Every one of those cows, mothers just had their babies taken away. And none of these, and after 16 weeks in the veal pen, little boy calves are shot in the head, hung up, and slaughtered for milk-fed veal. Now, the veal industry is an absolute essential part of the dairy industry. You can't have that milk flow without every other calf's a baby boy, and so the veal industry is an essential offshoot of the dairy industry. The mothers become four-legged milk pumps, like the females become four-legged milk pumps like their mothers. And no dairy cow dies of old age. When their milk production, after 4 or 5 years of calves and milk, their milk production goes down. My uncle would call the truck from the slaughterhouse. He'd come out. I shot the cow in the head, drag her carcass up onto the truck. This is the reality of dairy. It's a cruel industry. Every time a woman buys that container of Greek yogurt, puts Parmesan cheese on her spaghetti, she's paying, yes, take another calf away from its mother, take another baby away. And so the inherent cruelty, it's a slaughter industry. People say, well, you don't have to kill the cow to get the milk. Yes, you do. The dairy barn is a short stopping off place on the way to the slaughterhouse for a few years of calves and milk. You have no illusion that it's not a slaughter industry. Now back to the endometriosis connection here. Well, back in the 1950s, as I said, when we impregnate a cow and she'd dry up, stop giving milk, that's just, my uncle had to accept it. That's just biology. We milked 49 cows. Today's modern dairy operations, Iowa, Nebraska, Wisconsin, they're milking 1,000 cows, 1,500 cows twice a day. They can't afford to have their best milkers go offline while they carry their calf for 9 months. And so they've genetically modified the cows. The smart geneticists at the agricultural colleges came out to GMO the cows. So now today's modern dairy cows will give milk all the way through their next pregnancy. They're carrying their next calf and they're still pulling milk off these cows. Well, as any woman who's ever had a baby will tell you, when you're when you're pregnant, carrying a child, your whole body's full of estrogens, and it makes the hair grow, it makes breast big, it makes the uterus big. Wonderful when you're pregnant. But the estrogens get into all tissues, including the milk glands. It gets into the milk. And so today's modern dairy operations are producing cow's milk filled with estrogen. And these are not the puny little phytoestrogens in soy. These are official mammalian estrogens. These are estrone, estradiol, estriol, pregnanediol, progesterone. These are official mammalian estrogens. And they have biological effects. And studies have been done. You give kids a couple of glasses of milk, and if they're a boy, the testosterone levels go down as full of estrogens. And the researchers say it could affect the hormonal functioning of children. You think? Why are all little girls going through puberty at age 8 and 9 and 10? Could have something to do with this river of milk and cheese and ice cream and yogurt we're telling them to flood down their gullets full of estrogens. They not only, and these are active mammalian estrogens, they not only go through puberty early, they have to deal with their sexuality at age 9, but you follow them into womanhood, they have a nasty incidence of breast lumps and breast cancers. Estrogens make the prostate gland unstable. The more dairy products a boy eats, the higher his risk of prostate cancer when he's a man. And they get, the male breast responds, they get man boobs, every 100 breast cancers in a man. But coming around to your situation there, you're constantly flooding the uterus with estrogens. Well, as any pregnant woman, the uterus responds. It gets thicker and starts spinning out these benign tumors, myomas, fibroids that bleed and make the woman anemic. She winds up getting hysterectomy, or the menstrual flow, instead of going out the cervix, goes up out the fallopian tubes and sticks all over the abdominal wall, sticks on the ovaries, and they get these hellacious pains called endometriosis, because every month those little deposits and scatter over the abdomen respond to the estrogens, and the menstrual cycle happens in the woman's abdomen. It's hellaciously painful. And you go to the doctor, the gynecologist, why does this happen? Etiology unknown, just bad genes, we don't know. But you check her estrogen levels, they're way up. And when they stop the dairy, lo and behold, amazing, the breast lumps start receding, and the periods get lighter, and the endometriosis often gets much better. And so, it's not a natural phenomenon. It has to do with this very unnatural diet that we've adopted. So you ask, how did my experience on the dairy farm change my viewing of animal products and dairy products in particular? Oh man, now as I learned the science, it all fell into place. And now I understand what those cries were about coming from the dairy barn. Now I understand that when people say be wary of dairy, what they're talking about.
Wow, I have so much to say. What you just said, it was just like so, and it's funny, I actually didn't know until right now that they were changing the genetics of the dairy cows. And as someone, I've been to hundreds of doctors for endometriosis. Nobody knows like anything about it. And so same thing happened to me when I started my period. I was 11 years old. They put me on a high estrogen birth control when I was 11, and it just made everything so much worse. And it's so funny because so many of my clients now, the first thing that when they come to me, I'm like, if they have endometriosis or PCOS or like any painful periods in general, I'm like, just stop dairy. Like if you do anything, just get off dairy. And it just makes so much sense because of all that estrogen. It's like your body doesn't know what to do with it. And you just said it like so eloquently. I cannot wait for our listeners to hear this episode because it's just like, that aha moment. And I think so many people going vegan, they're like, or wanting to eat less meat, they say, oh, like I'll stop eating meat. Like that's helpful for the animals and blah, blah, blah. But really, if you don't quit dairy, you're still contributing to so much suffering that goes on in the world. And yeah, it's just nice to be able to like kind of link the chain, like that food food, I don't like to call it food, but that chain of supply for, meat and dairy, it's all connected. It's all pretty much the exact same thing when you look at that.
Absolutely. They call dairy liquid meat for a good reason.
Right.
Also, when we're through, I'll send you that study about the estrogens in cow's milk. And
Yeah, that would be great.
You bet. You can post it on your website.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really interesting. So, okay, you grew up on a dairy farm and then you ended up going to medical school. So what was like your first area of study when you went to medical school? Like what was your first interest in kind of the medical world and kind of going through that process?
Right. Well, boy, that's my whole history unfolding here. I knew I wanted to be a general practitioner. I wanted to stay connected with the people.
Yeah.
But I wanted to take postgraduate training in surgery and anesthesia and in obstetrics at the University of California, delivered hundreds of babies there. I wanted to be a really well-versed GP. So I went into practice with this additional training, but it didn't take many years. But after 6 years, I got so frustrated because nobody was getting healthier in my practice. My patients were getting more obese and more hypertensive and more diabetic. And I found myself just raising their doses of blood pressure medicine, raising their doses of insulin, and come back in a month and you ought to lose some weight, Joe. I had no idea what to tell them, how to do it. But after 6 years of that, I said, I can't do this for the next 40 years. Nobody's getting healthier. So I left general practice and decided to become an anesthesiologist. And went to Vancouver General Hospital and enrolled in the residency of anesthesia. And some events happened while I was an anesthesia resident that just opened up a whole new vision for me. And I'll be glad to share that story if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
Right. So you rotate through the various services,
Right.
urology, anesthesia, pediatric anesthesia. Then I was on the cardiovascular anesthesia service, dealing with people's hearts and blood vessels. And day after day, I'm putting people to sleep and I'm watching surgeons open their chest and open the arteries in their heart and pull this yellow, greasy guck out called atherosclerosis. And that led to heart attacks and strokes. And there were already studies in the literature showing, the nature of the fatty cholesterol-laden nature of this stuff. And one day I'm watching a surgeon pull a particularly rubbery, slithery piece of this guck out of the arteries. And I remember my mother cleaning chickens at the kitchen sink there. And I thought, boy, that stuff looks like chicken fat. And a little voice on my shoulder said, there's a good reason why it looks like chicken fat, doctor. It is chicken fat and cow fat and pig fat and the fat of the animals this man was eating. And there are already studies in the literature showing that a plant-based diet will melt away these plaques. And my dad died of clogged arteries. I know I've got those genes. And I knew if I kept eating my ham sandwiches and burgers and things that I was going to wind up on that operating table with that striker saw going up my sternum. And I sure didn't want that to happen. So I was getting the message from my left brain, stop eating all these animals, adopt a plant-based diet. And then in fact, I was still on the cardiovascular service. I would go out for dinner with another anesthesia resident. And I had done a lot of my training at Big Bad Old Cook County Hospital in Chicago and the trauma unit. And I saw the worst of what humans do to each other. And they're just shaking. And I decided that if I couldn't clear all the violence in the world, at least I wanted to get the violence out of my own life. And so I started reading the works by Mahatma Gandhi and Satchidananda and the Indian saints about living a life of nonviolence. So ahimsa is the term. And so I was trying to live up to this. And I'm out with my friend and we're having dinner. And I was pontificating about living a life of nonviolence while I was polishing off a porterhouse steak at the local pagan cleaver. And John says, with great compassion, that's all very nice, Michael, but if you want to get the violence out of your life, you might want to start with that piece of meat on your plate, because in satisfying your desire for the taste of flesh in your mouth, you are paying for the death of that animal and for the next one in line at the slaughterhouse. And as soon as he said that, all the old rationale it kind of jumped into my head. Well, the animal's dead already, and that's what they raised them for, and
Mm-hmm.
all of that. But before I could get the words out, that same little voice said, it's right. It's right. And again, I lived on the farm. I saw the violence inherent in putting meat on the table. I chopped the heads off chickens. I saw those cows shot in the head. You can't create a meat-based meal without causing suffering and death to some animal. And it just rang so true that when I went up to pay for the steak dinner, I felt complicit in a crime because I knew those animals are beautiful and I'm paying for their death. So between what I was understanding in the operating room and what I felt in my heart that night in the restaurant, I knew that was the end of my meat eating. Well, I adopted a plant-based diet. I ordered the bean chili instead of the beef chili, big sacrifice. And boy, my body loved it. Boy, within 12 weeks, a 20-pound spare tire of fat melted off my waist. My high cholesterol went to normal. My high blood pressure went to normal. I felt great waking up in a nice lean body every day. And at that point, I realized I didn't want to be an anesthesiologist anymore and spend my career putting people to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather go back to general practice and help them wake up. And so much to my parents' dismay, I had 6 months to go in my residency, but I left, and as it's not in truth for me, went back to general practice, started talking to my patients about plant-based eating and sending them to friends who could give them plant-based cooking lessons like you do. And suddenly my patients started experiencing the same great changes. They got leaner, their high blood pressure came down, their high cholesterol comes down, their diabetes gets better, and they turned into healthy people right before my eyes. And since then, I've become the happiest doctor I know. My patients get healthy. And like my colleagues, they're all getting fatter and sicker. That's right, doctor. Don't talk to them about what they're eating. That's what you're going to see.
Mm-hmm.
Get them on, send them to the plant-based dietitian and the plant-based chef. Get them on plant-based diet. In fact, in my slideshow at the end to the medical students, I put up a slide with a controversial question. It says, "You want to heal these patients or don't you? I mean, really, why did you go into medicine? If you're just going there to raise their statin dose every month and raise their beta glucan, you're going to leave medicine. You will not persist in this specialty, in this practice. You want to get these people healthy, you can get real about why they're sitting in front of you, doctor, overweight, diabetic, hypertensive, clogged up and inflamed from what they're running through their bloodstream every 4 hours. Stop. Ooh, that's cultural. We can't talk about diet. Yes, doctor, you want to heal these patients or don't you? If you do, then be real about it, and might well look at your own diet at the same time, by the way."
Yeah, exactly.
Right, because the doctors are eating the same stuff themselves. So I become a plant-based doc. As I said, I'm the happiest doc I know. But in recent years, I've left clinical practice. I still do plant-based telemedicine.
Mm-hmm.
But the work I want to do now is through our initiative called Moving Medicine Forward, where I'm going to the medical schools and doing presentations to the med students before pharmacosclerosis sets into their brains, and tell them it's the food your patients are eating. Start there. So in a nutshell, a big nut, but that's basically
It's a big nut.
my history and how I came to be talking with you today.
Wow, I love that. I have like so many follow-up questions. I'll just go to like the
Sure.
most recent thing that you said first. Just like since you're, I have one of my really good friends is in medical school, and I actually have, I know lots of people who are in medical school right now. And you think that even with so many studies out there, so much information about plant-based diet, do you think that their training will change? Or do you think because it's based on pharmaceuticals and kind of surgeries that it will stay the way that it is and it will continue to be like this uphill climb when it comes to educating doctors about diet?
Oh my, you have put your finger on the koan, the quandary that we all face. How do you get, it's like turning an ocean liner. There's such inertia in medical education to keep things going the way they're going.
Right.
And as you said, I was at the University of Washington, Seattle, and I gave this lecture, and the very enthusiastic welcome of the information. And afterwards, this chief of surgery comes down and says, "Doc, a great lecture. Glad you got that out between you and me." until they start asking questions about nutrition on the national board exams, we're not going to be teaching this stuff. It's enough for us to get physical diagnosis and biochemistry into these kids' heads. We don't know anything about nutrition. We're not going to be teaching them. So reality check. And so with that, we go to the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And we then went to the National Board of Medical Examiners. And I said, what is it going to take for you to get questions about nutrition and lifestyle on the exam? Well, we don't know anything about it. You bring us the question. So we went to the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, who are putting together a pool of 1,000 questions on nutrition. And within the next 2 years, there will be questions about nutrition on the national boards. That's going to start helping.
Wow.
Second, though, is you're absolutely right. There's huge inertia, and this breaks the model of the medical establishment. They do not welcome this information. It breaks the model scientifically. They hide behind etiology unknown. We don't know the cause of diabetes. It's
Right.
the food. It's the food, doctor. But so it breaks their intellectual model. It breaks their economic model because a lot of people are going to not need bypasses and stents. So they didn't want to hear this message. So that's been the great challenge. Fortunately, however, thanks to people like you and others, it's the year 2021, and in every medical school class now, there's 20, 30, 40 students who've seen movies like Forks Over Knives and What the Hell,
Right.
and Cowspiracy and Seaspiracy. The light's on. They know that food's important. And I mentioned the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. There are now lifestyle medicine interest groups, the LMIGs, in every medical school across the country. There are lifestyle medicine clubs that come together, and they're the ones who invite me in. They arrange the event. They put up the posters. It's mostly done by Zoom nowadays, send out the notices. And so we'll go right to the students directly. We just do an end run around the administration. And they'll come along.
They'll catch up.
They'll catch up. But I want to talk to the students directly, and they are so receptive. After every one of my talks, I get these lovely notes. Why didn't somebody tell us this? Oh, this opens the door. Now I understand what I'm looking at. When I open the door into the emergency room waiting area there, or the surgical outpatient, now I understand why these patients have these diseases. So we're going right to the students, and you can't unring the bell. Once you look behind the curtain, you can't pretend you know what's behind the curtain.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
Exactly. And so after the lecture, and I turn the lights on these students' head, they can't forget what they just saw. And I said, go learn the basic sciences, go become an ophthalmologist, an obstetrician, whatever it is. But you're all going to be dealing with nutrition-based diseases, and whatever your specialty is, understand that a plant-based diet will reverse these diseases. You need to know what's caused them, how to reverse it. You'll be the happiest doc you know. And they're very receptive to that message.
Wow, that's amazing. I think something that's also probably challenging when talking to students, especially with social media and everything, is just the mass amounts of misinformation that's out there, and the mass amounts of people that are for dairy, or people that are for the carnivore diet, or for the keto diet, or there's like so much misinformation. There's so many people arguing with each other, from doctors to medical students, people that have never attended any college ever, that are claiming things. So I would love to kind of get your take on misinformation, especially within like the nutrition realm, especially regarding areas around dairy, because I know dairy is still something that people really love to defend, that and there's also the whole concept of like the double blind clinical trial with, millions of people. And that's the only way to prove if something is correct. So there's that. And then there's also trends like weight loss trends like keto or carnivore that's going in the exact opposite direction of the plant-based lifestyle. So I'm wondering, how do you kind of move past those roadblocks and really trying to get through to people that what is the truth, without needing that double blind study for millions of people for 10 years.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, these are such sophisticated, appropriate questions that you have, because when I give lectures, the students are very open, but there's always a professor in the back with his arms folded. They're showing 15 double-blind placebo-controlled studies. They're showing, but you can do that when it comes to a new drug. It either works or it doesn't. You can
Right.
match with a placebo. So it works for pharmaceutical. It
Right.
doesn't work for nutrition. People know what they're eating. First
Right.
of all, you can't do a double-blind study there. And second, to really minimize the variables. Is soy healthy? Is dairy healthy? You would have to take 1,000 people, 10,000 people, whatever. Take half of them, put them all on the same diet for 20 years or 30 years.
Right.
But one with the dairy milk versus soy milk, say, follow them for 30 years and see who dies and who gets heart attacks and stroke. Because the only thing that matters is the endpoint. You can look at cholesterol levels, doesn't matter. What's the outcome? These people live longer and healthier, don't they? And nobody's going to do that study. Who's going to fund that study? The dairy folk, they're not going to do that. The soy milk, you can't do those studies. As I said, it's the length of it, the impossibility of blinding it. It's a silly argument to make. Now, those people who want to, however, you've got to have some kind of proof, and there are cross-sectional studies and various other studies. I urge people to look up the work of Dr. David Katz, K-A-T-Z, in the True Health Initiative. And Dr. Katz has a hierarchy of evidence that you apply to nutritional studies. And he's a very mature approach to this. And so if those folks who are just hung up on the scientific studies, check out Dr. Katz's work and you'll see how to evaluate nutritional studies. That said, what about these important issues you raised? The keto diet, paleo diet, carnivore diet. The issues go like this. Like my friend Dr. John McDougall says, people love to hear good news about bad habits. Or anything that says, oh, eat more steak. They want to hear that. It gives them validation. And so how do they summon that up? Well, it starts with the misinformation. That is, well, we should eat like our caveman ancestors did. Don't eat anything a caveman wouldn't eat. And like every Neanderthal had a mastodon in the freezer and spent all day eating mammoth meat. I'm a caveman, I eat mammoth meat. Totally. Well, it turns out that's a complete myth. First of all, most hunts were unsuccessful. Most times the guys came back empty-handed. If they did drag a carcass back into camp, they had no refrigeration, it rotted within days. And when you look at the fossilized fecal droppings, the coproliths from these people, the paleo folks, you see the massive amount of plant fiber they were eating, 100, 150 grams of plant fiber a day. And the reality is the majority of calories brought into the Paleolithic camps were gathered by the women who spent all day foraging, digging up roots and tubers, and gathering berries and nuts and fruits and edible grasses. This whole paleo caveman meat eating myth is a myth, absolutely. The carnivore is, we'll get into the ecological side of that. But lost train of thought here. The keto diet, another one. First of all, ketosis is good for the body for a few days, man, but you don't want to keep yourself in that state of ketosis week after week after week. It's a state of acidosis. It's a state of stress on the body. It's going to hurt the kidneys, the liver. We are not meant to live in ketosis. Now, people lose weight when they go on, because I've had my paleo colleagues say, well, my patients get better on a paleo diet. They lose weight, the cholesterol goes down. Yeah, they do. You'll see that because especially the paleo folks say some things I agree with. No caveman ever milked a dairy cow, so they're down on dairy. No caveman ever squeezed olive fat on their salads, and so they're down on oils. And no caveman ever ground wheat into flour and made vegan donuts, and so they're down on baked goods. Well, you pull the dairy, the oil, and the baked goods out of your diet, man, you're going to trim down. And the weight loss itself, that'll lower your cholesterol, it'll lower your blood pressure. And if you don't eat any sugars, your blood sugar will come down. And so they say, aha, see? But I said, wait a minute. I've been a physician for over 40 years. No question that I tell them, do not be seduced by these early beneficial changes. You'll see them in the first few months. But if you think that stuffing your intestinal tract full of decaying animal flesh 3 times a day, year after year, is a good thing, in my way, this is a recipe, first of all, for an epidemic of colon cancer. They're full of, you cook animal flesh, you're going to smear benzopyrene on the inside of the colon. They're going to have a ton of colon cancer. This is a setup with all the saturated fat and cholesterol for artery disease. You're going to see an epidemic of heart attacks and strokes. It's going to damage the blood vessels in the brain. That opens the door to dementias, Alzheimer's disease. The high-fat diets cause insulin resistance, opens the door to type 2 diabetes. And the microbes that a flesh-based diet spawns are nasty pathogens that burrow into the wall of the colon. You wind up with colitis and Crohn's disease. This is an epidemic of degenerative diseases brought on by an abnormal, unnatural diet. And I told these young docs, you're going to be around in 15 years when this guy passes his first bloody stool from that colon cancer that your meat-based diet spawned. Now you're going to be off to your luxury spa position in Phoenix. You're not even going to see this patient. You're going to be around in 20 years when this lady has a big old stroke from that carotid plaque that your meat-based diet spawned in her. You won't even be around to see this. This is drive-by nutritional advice. Nobody has eaten the keto diet or paleo diet for 20 years. People have eaten plant-based diets in the blue zones for hundreds of years.
Right.
But this is book-selling theoretical advice because justifying animal flesh consumption. But to think this is a natural diet of man is bizarre. We are plant-eating hominids. We have fingers on our hands, not claws. We've got big, long intestines for digesting fiber. We've got small mouths with rotary jaw joints and flat, grinding molar teeth to bite into roots and fruits and tubers. We've got saliva in our mouths that have enzymes that digest starch, if that's not a message from the universe. We've got basically the same digestive system that our gorilla and bonobo cousins have. And they're up in the trees eating leaves and fruit tonight and growing these magnificent muscular bodies, passing these big soft stools. Never had a gorilla in the office saying, Doc, I'm afraid I'm not getting enough protein. This whole idea that we're somehow carnivorous apes is such a grotesque distortion of the anatomy, of the physiology, and the truth of the history of it. But again, people love to hear good news about bad habits. Anything that justifies eating that chicken breast, man, it's the paleo guy, it's good for me.
Yeah.
Well, when you pass that bloody stool, see how paleo you feel. Whether that's truly a good idea. So, yeah.
It's interesting too, like, when you go back to that whole thing that you said in the beginning of nonviolence, I think we have such a violent culture to begin with. We are obsessed with violence. We're obsessed with violent video games. The news is obsessed with violence. We are obsessed with violence. And I think that a lot of times, even look at Joe Rogan. He's someone that really is backing the carnivore diet, but he's also an announcer for UFC tournaments, and he promotes violence all the time. So you can't really listen to someone if you're trying to promote more peace and healing. And, when I talk to clients about food, it's it's a transfer of energy. So if you're getting the energy of an animal that's been petrified its entire life, that's been murdered in front of its friends and family, its own kind, you're eating violence, you're eating anxiety, you're eating all of this energy that it's just it is not nonviolence. And so even if you break down the science, the energy, the spirituality of it, it just doesn't make any sense. But then you look at humankind's history in general, we are obsessed with violence. And I think in order to kind of come to homeostasis with our planet and each other and, finding some sort of similar ground, we have to find a way to be less violent in our day-to-day lives. And such an easy way to do that, like you said, is through what we're eating and having compassion through ourselves and the world around us through what we're eating. And the science matches it too.
What a beautiful exposition on such an important subject. We're the killer ape here.
Yeah.
It's our solution to problem. If there's a scary forest in front of you, cut it down. If there's
Right.
red people, kill them. There's an animal there, might be about to kill it. We use killing as our problem solving mechanism.
Right.
But a bigger picture here that's so important. We're facing environmental disaster and destruction. The planet is warming, carbon dioxide is going up, the ice caps are melting. We're in big trouble. People don't associate the reality. It's from our diet. It's from our flesh consumption. 1,000 years ago, there were 6 trillion trees on planet Earth, taking carbon dioxide out of the air, turning it into solid wood, keeping the biosystem working. We have cut down half those trees. We cut down 3 trillion trees and burned them and turned the former forest land into cropland, growing corn and soybeans to shovel down the gullet of animals, or grazing land to let these billions of cows and pigs and goats, cows and sheep graze. Well, the problem is that as carbon dioxide is going up, as I said, things are getting warmer. How do we reverse global warming? Gee, let's build carbon capture machines. No, people, nature already did that. They're called trees. And all you need to do is, if we change to a plant-based diet, we'll need so much less land, 1/4 of the land, to grow our food, that the 3/4 of land, we can let most of the forest come back. And as the trees grow, they take carbon dioxide out of the air, make it solid as wood, and the soils will stabilize, the waters will run pure again. There'll be enough food to feed everyone. World hunger will disappear. The wars will disappear. It's the key to our future. All we need to do is stop eating animals and let the forest come back. And now there's 2 issues with that. And by the way, I urge everyone to get this wonderful little book by Glenn Mercer called Food is Climate. And in 60 pages, half of it's recipes, but in 60 pages, he lays out the entire story of the connection between our animal-based diet and our major environmental problems here. The issue is that you're going to throw the farmers and the ranchers off their land. And I've been raising cattle here for my granddaddy, been running cattle on this land for 100 years. You run into that. The farmers and the ranchers are not the enemy. They're our brothers and sisters. They're growing our food. Help them do something else with the land. You don't have to run a dairy operation. You don't have to run cattle on it. Do something else. Grow fruit trees, grow vegetables, grow industrial hemp, pay them to let the forest come back, and make it easy on these folks. Send them to community college, learn how to grow new crops, buy their equipment for them, buy their seeds for them, give them crop insurance, pay the mortgage on their house for 10 years, send their kids to college. Help these people to lift them up and do something else with a new chapter in their lives. It doesn't have to be over my dead body. And everyone wins there. It's just a matter of money and political will. It can be done. I urge people to go to the website of Dr. Silas Rao called climatehealers.org, and you will see the case laid out beautifully. And one last website is called Comfortably Unaware by Dr. Richard Oppenlander. His little book is right where the meat and dairy industry want us, Comfortably Unaware. And go to comfortablyunaware.com and read his book, see the videos there. You'll get the idea. But all the way around, the lights are flashing. Individual humans, you want to be healthier, adopt the whole food plant-based diet. Homo sapiens, you want to survive as a species, adopt the whole food plant-based diet. On every level, the lights are flashing.
Right.
We've used meat eating up. No matter what the mighty hunter did, it doesn't matter. We've used it up. We've used fishing up. We've used the oceans up. It's time to let them heal. And it's time to let the land heal. It's time to let our bodies heal. Enough of this orgy of killing and eating flesh. No other animal does that. No primate, no gorilla eats flesh 3 times a day. It certainly doesn't feed its young animal flesh 3 times a day. It's such a transgression of the natural law. So it's time for us to to recognize and welcome our plant-eating nature, and everything will get better, from our arteries to the planet. Because people, doesn't matter what your cholesterol level is, doesn't matter what your cancer risk is, if we don't have a viable planet to live on,
It doesn't matter.
it doesn't, none of this
Right.
matters. And
Yeah.
so let's keep our priorities straight.
And it's so hard too, because, there's so much money from the meat and dairy industry, processed food industries. There's so much money in, politicians' pockets that it's hard to, you feel like as a consumer, you want to be able to like, okay, like I'm doing my part, I'm saving water. But really, like if they don't make fundamental changes, when they're making laws, when they're taking money from people, when they're allowing this entire planet to turn into a giant farm, like if there's no like restrictions, or even like there needs to be some repercussions for these companies for destroying our planet, but there's nothing. And I think that's the hardest part, is we have all these politicians who have been there for so long that they don't care about the people that they're politicianing for. And like, whether you're Republican or Democratic, it doesn't matter, because your children are all going to be in the same mess, and it shouldn't matter. Like, it shouldn't matter. We should all be fighting for the same thing, which is our environment. But it's looked at as this very liberal, very like woo-woo thing. But the science is there. It's all there. And yeah, I loved what you said. But I hope that we can put enough pressure on them to change, because I'm afraid that by the time they'll be willing to change, it will be much too late.
I agree. You certainly laid out the case, and that, of course, is the big cloud that's hanging over, and how short-sighted, how venal these politicians are for trading their kids' future for more money from the various industries,
right.
etc. It's a tragedy of the highest order, no doubt.
Yeah.
But the one place you do have some power,
yes,
is pulling your wallet out.
Yeah.
When you are pushing that cart down the supermarket aisle, and when you're in the restaurant with that menu in front of you, that's the two times that you can exert some power, because that's putting that dollar down is so powerful. And if we just stop buying the stuff and eating the stuff, it'll rot in the dairy case, it'll rot in the meat case. And guess what? They'll start producing plant-based. They already are. Tyson's already doing plant-based chickens, and they see the handwriting on the wall.
Right.
And so at least, what can we do? We can each stop buying the stuff and eating it. And we can set a good example. People look at what you're eating. They look at you. They hear what you say. And, society can change quickly. The internet, can change minds in a short time. Yeah. But I hear Joe Rogan, these guys, I would like to take him and shake him. Do you know what you are advocating? If you say carnivore is the best diet, everybody ought to be eating carnivore. Joe, are you truly advocating a flesh-based diet, a flesh-based meal 3 times a day for 8 billion people on this planet? Sir, with a straight face, are you advocating that? Because everyone's equal, everyone should have a good opportunity. If that's what you are advocating, you are calling for the death of this planet. There's no possible way that we need 3 Earths to do that. So for them to be spouting these ideas without the understanding where they are on planet Earth at this time in history, no matter what, when there was 2,000 people on Earth, didn't matter so much. Now it matters. And so it's so irresponsible for them to make those carnivore calls.
100%. And then on the opposite side, I mean, look at you, like you changed your life, and think about the thousands, millions of people that you've touched who have listened to your podcast, listened to your seminars. Me, I come from a long line of butchers. My grandfather was a chef. I was a butcher. And now I've been able to affect thousands of people. And I think that any single person, although you think that first step, that first plant-based meal, that first step is always the hardest for everyone, like changing everything you've ever learned about food is clearly challenging. But if you can make that step, you'll have a ripple effect. Even if when you're first getting started, it doesn't feel like anything, you never know what it could turn into. And I think if more people feel empowered enough to be out there and make changes and go against the norm, I think that there's so much hope for us, and going against people like Joe Rogan. And maybe Joe Rogan will have, some sort of epiphany one day.
He might. When he passes that first bloody stool, then we'll see how
when he has a heart attack or something.
Yeah,
exactly.
and I don't wish him any
No.
personal harm, but the reality is going to pick up the big 2x4 there,
Exactly.
and
Mm-hmm.
I hope he gets the message on the first blow there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's so true.
Um,
Well, I'd love to kind of like close this amazing conversation out with just some like fire questions. I love to get to know
okay,
my guests
sure.
on like a different level. So just
Okay,
answer like the first thing that comes to mind. It's only like
okay.
10 questions.
All right.
Okay, you ready?
Somebody asked how old I am. I'm 74,
Oh, you're
and
74.
I feel like I was when I was 40. I go out for 20-mile bike rides, do yoga every other morning, and so it works. And
Yes.
you don't have to become vegan overnight. If it gets your meat eating down to once a week or twice, but it sure beats 3 times a day. And
Yes,
it takes you
exactly.
3 months or 6 months to train. It's fine, but
Hmm.
start making that move
Start.
away from flesh eating. Go ahead.
Exactly. Okay, you ready? Okay,
Yeah.
breakfast or dinner?
Dinner.
Dinner. Okay, green juice or a green smoothie?
Green smoothies.
Green smoothie. Okay, do you like lentils or beans better?
Beans, so many different types.
Okay, would you prefer a staycation or a vacation?
Vacation.
Vacation, yeah, we do. Meditation or yoga, like a moving meditation.
Yoga. I'm a tough meditator.
Yeah, it's
I like
hard.
moving. Yeah,
There's a lot of thoughts going on up there.
yeah.
Okay, winter or summer?
Summer.
Oh yeah. Raw or cooked foods?
Raw is healthier, cooked is tastier. 50-50.
That nice little blend of both. I totally agree.
Absolutely.
And from like
Yeah.
a chef's flavor perspective, I think if you have a blend of both, you get like all the really good flavors. So I love that. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Ooh, early bird, without
Early
question.
bird. I
I'm a
kind of had
morning
a
guy.
feeling, but you're also
Yeah,
a doctor, so you've been trained to kind of
yeah,
like,
yeah,
wake up at
yeah.
all hours.
I'm a
Would
morning
you
guy.
would you prefer tea or coffee?
Tea.
Tea, me too. I'm a
Yeah,
tea person.
yeah.
Yeah.
Coffee got me through many nights in the emergency room. The coffee oils are hard in my stomach, and it's a tough drink for me. There's so
Yeah.
many lovely teas available now, so I
I
go with
feel the same way. I drink coffee and it hits my stomach so hard. I'm like, oh, can't do
yeah,
this.
right, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and the final one. What's your favorite holiday?
My favorite holiday. I've abandoned most of them. Uh, the first day of summer,
The first day of
summer
the summer
solstice. Yeah,
solstice. Oh my God, that
yeah,
is such a good answer. I would probably have to agree with you on that. Yeah.
yeah.
Happy times. I love it. Well, thank you so much. Do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
I hope you get a sense of how important it is. Your body is never okay. Okay, there's no fooling your body.
Mm.
Your arteries know what you eat. Your liver knows what you eat. To thine own health be true. Shakespeare, if he didn't say it, he should have said it. And so eat plants, make them taste wonderful, and know you're doing something wonderful for your body, for the earth, and for all the children and animals that are alive now and will come after us. It's the most loving thing you can do. It's
Thank you.
adopt a plant-based diet.
That's beautiful. Thank you.